Elliott. I have worked for Patuxent since September. I'm a Maryland Master Gardener, and I work primarily in the trees and shrubs area here. So, my colleague.
My name is Gabriela, so I work in perennials, and I've been there for 4 years now. So, yeah, I think I know some of this.
Please, she's the perennial expert. She's the go-to person. So, anyway, so the first thing we're going to just talk about is gardening in the shade, and a lot of people have a little bit of denial. You know, because gardening in the shade has its special challenges. So. We like to say if you live in an older neighborhood, then you're probably a shade gardener. But you might be like going through those stages of denial where you're like, no, I can't. But really, I want to grow roses. Well, you are in the shade. You know, you really need to look at the plants that do best in that environment. So my advice to you is, you know, if you do have a shade yard, put those blinders on and go straight to the shade areas of your nursery. Camp yourself out there and just get to know the beautiful plants that are available to you. It's like we always say, right plant in the right place. And so it's like not forcing something that really doesn't want to be in that environment. So we look at the light requirements for these plants, and they love the shade, and that's why they do so well there. So it's working through those stages of grief for some people. You know, they want the roses, they want the flowers, but they're going to have to embrace the shade. There are different levels of sun and shade. So when we say full sun, usually means 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight on an area, and we invite people to, you know, really walk around their properties and take notice of how much light they have in different parts of their yard, and that will help them choose the right plants. So that full sun is not what we're talking about today. We're talking about more like partial shade, which is like 4 to 6 hours. They're gonna need a little bit, they're gonna benefit from some shade in the hottest part of the day, or dappled or filtered shade, you might hear that term. That's usually under a canopy of trees. Be dappled or filtered shade. And full shade would be 3 to 4 hours only of sunlight. Those plants really, they would have their direct sunlight early in the day. And last but not least, the no man's land, Gabby, is the dense shade. Now, when you have dense shade, you have very little light. It might be like the north side of a building, you know, that is like shaded most of the day. And a lot of times we say that's like fern territory. Yeah, that's where ferns would do really well. So that's like a pretty dark spot in your yard. Another thing to think about is some of the rules of shade design. So if you do have a shady yard, you might think about the fact that you just embrace the fact that you've got all this shade. You can create like an oasis of tranquility. You can really get into these different levels of green. You can plant blues. You can kind of go with those cool tones in design, like blues, greens, purples, and embrace that and make your yard feel really cool. Another thing you can do is you can create a layer. You can have a mix of trees, shrubs, and perennials. And you can also plant bulbs and put in some annuals to give you a bright spot. So a lot of shade gardening people, we love the spring. We can plant a lot of tulip bulbs, for instance, or spring ephemerals. Those are like the bluebells, the Virginia bluebells, and different perennials that will pop up in those times.
And those are for the spring.
Yeah.
Like Virginia bluebells, they do their bloom in the spring. And then after they're done blooming, they go dormant, but they will come back next spring.
Yeah.
You only see them in the spring.
Right, and those plants, like, they really almost disappear from the landscape.
Yeah.
You can forget that you have them, and it's like a wonderful surprise in the springtime. You know?
Yeah, when they come back.
Yeah, so that's cool. You can get into that. You can think about texture. We're going to talk about all these different types of plants and the textures that they have, and you can kind of layer different textures to make your shade garden a little more exciting. You can also light up your garden with mirrors and with different, like, you could really bring in some decorative elements when you have a shady yard. Like, but we post, like, I'm a shade gardener. We have mirrors actually on some of our fences, and they reflect the light and brighten up that space. So you almost kind of dress up your yard like it's an indoor space.
Yeah.
You know, you can have fun with statuary. You can put in, if you want to put in some pottery to, like, give your space a little bit more brightness. There's a lot of things that you can do with decorative elements when you may not have those flowers, but you have these other options. So you can plant larger drifts. You can keep it simple and plant larger drifts of a certain type of plant that will give you a bigger impact. Another thing you can do is you can go vertical. So you can plant clematis, climbing hydrangea, other plants that will give you some vertical interest in your yard.
Yeah, we have an evergreen clematis, which will stay green in the winter, and it blooms some white flowers on it, really fragrant. So if you have a really shady grass, you can use that because it doesn't like the sun that much. So, and it's green, so you have green leaves in the winter, so which is nice. Most of the plants, they go dormant in the winter, but the evergreen clematis would be a nice one to use if you want to use that.
That's awesome. So yeah, and you can also, like, you can just accept that you've got this shady spot and you turn it into a patio. So you use hardscape, you put a pergola there. You can make pathways through it. So you just gotta get a little bit more creative with design when you have a lot of shade. The other thing you can do is you can eliminate or reduce your lawn. So with a big tree, a lot of times people struggle growing grass right under a big tree, right? So you can just accept that that's not an area of your yard that's going to be ideal for a lawn, and you can just remove some of that, and you can look to, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can plant some of these plants closer to the trees, and just pull that lawn back, because you're struggling with keeping it alive under the tree anyway, and some of these other plants would do just fine.
Yeah.
So that's another thing you can do. You can also have fun with lighting. So there are so many inexpensive lighting elements now. I'm seeing a lot on the internet. So you can do uplighting, with some of these dramatic plants, and it casts shadows in your yard. It looks really cool. So you can just play around with lighting elements. Also, think about enjoying your garden at night and adding more lighting to it. So that's another thing you can do. The other thing is just a design element is gold colored plants will make the shade, will brighten up your shady areas, kind of makes them glow.
Yeah.
And we've got some great examples.
We got some
here.
Bright colors here, and white is always good to use in the shade because it will pop up more. So go with lighter colors if you have a shade garden. So and like this, and like this ones right here are nice in the shade, so you can see it. Even though this one is small, but it's just really nice to see it when it's like the whole thing blooming. So it's really nice. It's light colors,
right? And you're variegated.
Yeah, and we have carrots, so it's variegated. So we have this. I also have that on the front that is nice to use, and the hosta. So we have this hosta that is more like a lighter color, and we have that one over there on the front that it has just the center white. So that's something that you can add there to make it brighter.
Yeah.
So it is not too green and dark.
Yeah, it'll break it up. That's awesome. Okay, so some of the benefits if you have a shade yard, there's less watering to be done. There's less work to be done actually in a shade garden. And so you can kind of just relax. It's actually more like Zen gardening because of that. So a little bit less work. And you'll find a lot of the plants that we're going to talk about today are easy care. So once you plant them, some of them don't need pruning for a while, or just you can kind of step back if you're a shade gardener once you put the right plants in your yard. So that's nice. Now some people really do want to plant around their trees, and so we have some advice for that. So trees have roots, right? And we don't want to upset them. So we want to pull back, and we can put some compost around the tree. We don't go right up to the tree trunk, but we can find, if we pull back a few feet from the tree, we can find these pockets where we can add some more soil and compost. And we can start really small with the small plants and kind of put little pockets of plants around our tree. And generally speaking, most trees, as long as you're not right up against their trunk, that they can coexist, and they will appreciate it. Actually, they may appreciate it quite a bit more than if we were trying to grow a lawn right up against the tree. So we can pull back a little bit. We can plant some pretty plants around the base of our tree pretty easily if we add some more soil, find those little pockets in between those roots, and it's great. So we say trees are pretty welcoming, and once they're established, they don't mind actually sharing their space. So the other thing is that you might have to water a little bit more if you plant under a tree, so keep in mind of that. And you don't want to water up on the tree trunk, so you're going to stay low. Pretty much with all watering, we want to water at the base, if we can, of the plants. They appreciate that.
Yeah, because the part that needs water is the bottom part, not the leaves. The leaves, they don't really need the water because you will burn them. If you water your plants on top, like especially now in the summer, you're gonna burn them. So it's always better to water like really low, because if you just do it here, it's not doing anything for the plant. You're causing damage to the plant. So it's always to go down.
Right, and also the other thing you might do is you water on your leaves, you might attract disease, fungal diseases if you're watering on those leaves. So yeah, always direct your water to the base of the plant. That's a good one. So overhead watering is kind of a no-no. I know some people have automatic sprinklers and that sort of thing where they're doing that, but in general, your plants will appreciate it if you don't overhead water. The other thing is that you can use hardscaping if you want to save some, if you have dry shade in your yard, you can use hardscaping to capture any rain that's coming. Like today we have a rainy day. Capture that rain and keep it on your property. So people that, it's a challenge to plant in dry shade, but you can do things with hardscaping, with even just using rocks and kind of guiding the rainwater, keeping it on your property will be great for your plants. So that's another thing to think about. You slow that runoff off your property, and it doesn't go into the storm drains. It stays on your property and waters the plants instead. So you can use some tactics of like zigzagging a little bit of hardscaping in your property and keep that water there. You want to do that. Okay, so those are my big tips for embracing the shade. And now we could talk about some of the plants.
Yeah. So we have this one right here, but it looks red as you can see, and it has the center is like a yellowish bloom, so you can look like that. That one gets up to 24 inches tall, and that can be in full shade. This can take the not sun at all. And the good thing is that it's bright with the bloom, so it's red, and it will attract pollinators, which in the shade is a little bit hard to do because there's not a lot of blooms and stuff for the pollinators to get there. But this one is really nice to use it that, and it's also native, so which means you can do well here. So that's good. Like I said, we got cactus too that you can add to your garden, that it will add a color to it if you just don't want a lot of blooms or anything, because there's some people that don't like bees or pollinators. So if you don't like the bloom that it gives, you can also just add it at the bottom and just get the leaves. And it's not gonna harm the plant, it's gonna be fine. But some people like to keep it, some of them they don't, so that will be up to you if you want to use it or not. We also have blue carrots right here. So it's a nice color, which we have different colors right there. You see darker and lighter. So that will be up to you what to choose and what to not put there. And we have carrots, like I said, this one. We have different ones. We have darker green, we have the variegated ones, and then we have that light variegated there. That's something to add the texture to it, because it has some like kind of texture to it, and it's like flowing, so that will be something good to add in your yard, and it looks nice. Which we also have a lot of more here, but it will take me forever if I talk about all of them. But there's a stilby here that blooms in the summer for the shade. It's also deer resistant, so it's good that we have a lot of issues here with deer, so that's something that you can use. And the carrots too is deer resistant. We have this one right here, which we have pink, and we also have white. But they're really soft, delicate, I would say, and the blooms kind of look like hearts, so they're called bleeding hearts. And they're really nice to use. They don't really need that much care. When they're in the ground for a year, they look really nice when they're blooming. So that's something good that you can use, but it likes shade. Too much sun, it will burn them. So that's that. And we have this one. This one I believe it gets like 3 to 6 feet tall, but it's really bright. So if you need something bright, you can use this, and it's also deer resistant. And it's called Sunken Aradia. So yeah, that will be mine. And I have this one right here. I have 2 more. This is anemone. This one blooms in the fall, and it's also deer resistant. You will get about 2 to 3 feet tall, just the bloom when it comes, and the bloom will be on the top, and it will be compact, and it will be very nice because you will get blooms in the fall. And it's also good to add blooms like spring, summer, and fall, like plants, not just, for example, summer. So if you take everything summer blooms, you're not going to see any color the rest of the time. So it's always good to add spring, summer, and fall, and also some greens that have variegated colors to it to make it look nicer. And we have this one right here, Tiarella. Perfect. It's native and it's simple. You can, I don't think you can tell it. It will grow and it will spread. So this is, it will give you, if you need to cover a lot of plant, it will spread and it will cover a lot, and it blooms white. So yeah, that's the perennials that I have for you today. And now we can do some of the shrubs that you can use.
We'll start with Gerard's rainbow locopoly. So pretty. So this is a native plant. This is a cultivar of a native plant. Locopoly is native to the southeastern United States. It has spring blooms that the butterflies appreciate. The blooms hold on for a long time in the spring. It has this beautiful green and cream variegated foliage, and the new growth comes out red. So it's really just like a pop of color in a spring garden. It's easy care. It's an evergreen shrub, and I think it does like acidic soils, so you could fertilize it along the lines of what you would do for an azalea or a camellia. So that is that one, and it is it's going to like about 3 to 4 hours of morning sun, and it grows to about 3 feet. So it's a nice manageable size shrub, but pretty slow growing. And that is the Locopoly Gerard's rainbow. I love that in my yard. Next we have Sweet Box. I'm going to talk about. That's a Sarcopoa, which is Sweet Box. It's a beautiful evergreen shrub. This shrub actually reaches their peak in the wintertime. So we're showing it in the summer. You're not getting the full effect of this really charming shrub. But it's a slow growing evergreen. It tolerates dry shade, which is helpful once it's established. It's going to be in 10 years, it's going to get 3 feet tall. So pretty slow grower. But that's also nice, less work for you. Less pruning. It's hardy for zones 7 through 9. The flower will be white. It has some flowering in the wintertime. The perfume, it's been likened as, I read that it's very fragrant when it flowers. And someone said it reminded them of walking by a Swedish bakery, which I thought sounded like a really good place to be. So I would want this in my yard, have my yard smell like a Swedish bakery. That would be awesome.
And it's really strong smell, so you can smell it from far when it's blooming.
I think I would plant these in mass and just have a party in the wintertime. It's also deer resistant, which we love. A lot of our folks have struggle with deer. And its main enemy is root rot. So you do not want to have its roots stay wet for long periods of time, and you can plant it a little bit higher in the ground so that it's not going to get wallowed down and just be wet constantly. That would be a problem for sweet box, but otherwise it's a super charming evergreen. Okay. Next up, Japanese Pieris. Japanese Pieris is such a beautiful shrub, again with this like multicolored interest, again with the new leaves flushing the red. This one will give you, again, 12 months of interest. It's always doing something. It's got this fiery red new growth. This plant, I like a plant that builds anticipation. And this one, you're always waiting for its next show. It's going to form these racemes, which is just a word for a stem where flowers will grow off of. So there'll be a little stalk and the flowers will come. It's decorative in the late winter time. It's also fragrant. The blooms, which are not blooming now, but they are long lasting and very beautiful. They're kind of like, this plant's often called Andromeda or Lily of the Valley plant. And the blooms are like little bells that hang off of the plant. So very, very dramatic and showy, especially if you plant a couple of them together. It's a real wow factor in your yard. And it's a great foundation plant. Really also deer and rabbit resistant. So that is Japanese Pieris or Andromeda. And next up, we're gonna go with this big beautiful Akuba. This is a Japanese plant. The Akuba is an evergreen shrub. It's gonna grow 6 to 8 feet tall. So it's a little bit larger than some of the shrubs we've been talking about. It is very slow growing. I have this plant in my own yard. It will be about 4 to 6 inches of growth every year. So it would love to be maybe on the east side of the yard and get 4 hours of sun, like getting some morning sun and shaded in the afternoon would be great for Akuba. It's a super foundation plant because once it's established, it doesn't need to be watered. It rarely needs to be watered, really, unless there's a drought condition. Once it's established, you're good to go. It also really doesn't need pruning. So it has sort of this beautiful exotic look, but it's a hard worker and a great like foundation plant. You can plant these plants 2 to 3 feet apart. They will tolerate almost any soil, including our Maryland clay soil. So as long as there's some well draining. So when I would plant this, I would add some compost in and mix a 50-50 of some compost leaf grow with my existing clay soil and then plant this up. This is a plant that deer will sample. They will sample this one, so not completely deer resistant. They might pick a nibble. But I know also people appreciate these and even bring them into their homes as houseplants too. So they really do have that exotic, tropical vibe, but hardworking plant. And that is the Akuba. Now we have our Mahonia. And isn't this another, like, don't we feel like we're in the tropics once again with the Mahonia? Now the Mahonia is one that This is a very unique type of Mahonia. A lot of the Mahonias have very prickly leaves. And so this one is from the Southern Living plant collection. And it has these soft leaves and really has just a beautiful feathery look to it. This one you can plant this in front of windows. If you had lower windows on your house, you could plant this in front of them. It's going to be more friendly than the other Mahonias because it doesn't have those prickly leaves. You want to think about, it would be perfect for an Asian-inspired garden. The Mahonia likes to like some water. So when you first plant it, you want to water a couple times a week. And after a couple growing seasons, it will just exist on what the water is in your existing rainfall. So it's another great one. You would want to, you could have some trouble with this plant if you put it on by a foundation, as a foundation planting with automatic sprinklers. So again, it's another one that we wouldn't want to overhead water at the base, but it is a beautiful, beautiful plant. Evergreen. Last but not least, I can't go anywhere without talking about hydrangeas, right? And this is, it's a native cultivar. This is ruby slippers. It is not showing its ruby slippers right now, but it will after it blooms. It does do this beautiful transition from white blooms to red. And a lot of people leave the blooms up all winter for winter interest. The ruby slipper is deciduous, so it will have kind of this architectural gnarled looking bark when the leaves come off, and you can actually leave the flowers up and also after that. So it's a gorgeous one. White blooms mature to pink. It's going to be 3 to 4 feet high. You would want to space it about 5 feet apart. And it likes hard shade. It can actually do a little bit more sun. There are quite a few shrubs out there that can kind of bridge the gap between a shady yard and a sunny one. And I think oak leaf hydrangeas are really the one that can do that. It's also very low maintenance. So it's a hardworking plant, long lasting, and it has some beautiful oak leaves. Also, it's visited by pollinators. So if you like pollinators, you'll have them in the springtime when it first blooms. And the last thing I would just say about it is, it's great for, it could be a foundation plant, it could be in a woodland setting, it could be tucked in sort of under a canopy of trees. And it's a stunning, when it's in bloom, it's a stunner. So that is ruby slippers hydrangea. So that is pretty much our chat.